book blurb that is going to sell your book. This is so incredibly challenging. Not only as writers can we write huge books, but when it comes to writing our book blurb, it can feel like the hardest thing to do. So hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm your book coach and developmental editor, and I help women write, edit, and publish books that inspire and create greater impact in this world. So in this video, we're going to tackle what a book blurb is, and we're going to talk about how to write one so that we can stop torturing ourselves and get back to writing our next book, right? So a book blurb or book description is often one of the hardest parts of the book writing process. It is really what sits on the back cover of your book. It can also be used if you are submitting your book to agents or publishers. It shows up many places, both in trying to sell your book to a publisher if you're going traditional route, or it might live in places when you're trying to sell it online and through your marketing. So as writers, we are often tend to be a little bit long-winded, and we have written full-length books. So how in the heck do you whittle down what your book is about into a really small paragraph that is going to hook readers and convince them that they should buy your book? No pressure, right? Well, crafting a book blurb that sells is absolutely possible when you know what the key elements are to include within your book description. So a strong and compelling book description is really important because it's going to spark curiosity and it creates urgency, and ultimately it convinces your audience that your book is the one that they need to buy. So let's break it down and let's start with what is a book blurb. So I'm going to use book blurb and book description kind of interchangeably because they are. And a book blurb, which is just a really short, enticing summary of your book. And it does appear on your back cover. It might be on online product pages like Amazon or other marketing materials. So it really, the sole purpose of this paragraph is to hook your reader and convince them to buy your book. Notice I didn't say it needs to be a summary of everything that happens in your book. It is enough to get someone to lean in to say, hey, that sounds really interesting. I want to read that. That is the goal of the book blurb. The total length of a book blurb is about 150 to 250 words, and it really conveys just enough of your book without giving everything away. So you want to think about more TV commercial for your book, not the whole full length, like cliff notes of your book. We're not trying to create that. It really is making people curious enough to go, I want to read that. Now that we kind of know what a book blurb is, let's talk about the key elements of really creating a compelling one. So the first is to start with a hook. So this is where we want to get our claws into people's attention and hold their attention for the length of this paragraph. So the first sentence is critical. It is really grabbing customers' and readers' attention, and really think about, the opening scene of your book potentially, or a movie. Like, we don't sit there and get a dissertation on all the backstory of your character or what happens in your book. So it's about being compelling enough that readers are going to keep reading. So let's think about how you might approach opening this, both for fiction or nonfiction. So in fiction, here's an example of an opening sentence of a book blurb. Lena thought her secret was safe until a stranger moved in next door. Okay, we've got Lena as the main character. We know there's something that she's got a secret, and now we know a stranger has moved in next door. So that was a pretty short sentence, and we've already got so many elements of the story that are showing up. And I'm intrigued. I don't know about you, but I'm like, whew, this sounds like the perfect setup for a great thriller. Okay, so here's a nonfiction example. What if you could transform your mindset and finally achieve your goals in just 30 days? Whew. My goals, I know, take more than 30 days because it takes way longer to write a novel in 30 days. However, when it comes to running my business, there are times where I want to get something done in 30 days. And I know that business can often challenge your mindset. So this is something that I'm like, would lean in and be like, actually, how do I change my mindset so I can get what I want in a shorter period of time? So if that is something that you are wanting, then you're already probably thinking, oh my gosh, sign me up for this. So here you can see the hook, or the first sentence of your book description, does not need to give it all away, but you need to hook the attention of the person who is reading this description of your book. So it's really to either capture their interest or capture their imagination. So by asking a question like the nonfiction example did, you're asking a question to get people thinking like, heck yes, I want that. In the fiction, you're already interested because you can kind of feel your heart racing. Like, oh God, there's a stranger moving in next door and a secret's going to be revealed. What happens next? Okay, so the second part of the book description needs to introduce the conflict, if you're writing fiction, or the book promise if you are writing nonfiction. Here's what I mean. So the next element of a powerful book description is really dependent on your genre. Again, if it's fiction, your reader needs to know who your main character is. They need to immediately start to build that connection with your character because we want them to care about that character as they go on the journey you're going to take them on. So you can do this by introducing your main character by name and introducing the core conflict. So in that example that we saw with Lena, she has a secret and we know her name is Lena. So there we go. We're already building that connection to this character. So when you introduce their name and the conflict, you really want readers to think, I need to know what happens next. So when we avoid over-explaining, that actually works in our benefit because now we're intriguing people, and being intriguing is your best friend when it comes to your book description. We do not want to over-explain here. So here's another example for fiction. As Lena tries to outrun her past, her new neighbor seems to know more about her than she's ever revealed. Can she keep her secret, or will it destroy her new life? So you can see here again, we are building off of that initial hook that told us exactly what that core conflict was and who's involved, but now we're getting a little bit more information about how Lena is going to resist and avoid this person, and it's very intriguing, how does this person know more about her than she's ever revealed? And is it going to ultimately destroy her new life? We're asking this question, she's been building a new life, what's going to happen? So more intrigue here is being built rather than over-explaining that who this neighbor is, what their name is, how they know this information. We're not going there. We're just focusing on the intrigue. So for nonfiction, your character really is your reader. So make sure they understand exactly what your book can do for them. So you want to clearly state the problem that they are experiencing and why they're going to be reading your book, because ultimately your book is the solution to that problem. So an example for nonfiction here is this book will teach you practical strategies to shift your mindset, build resilience, and finally achieve the life you've been dreaming of. Who does not want that? So again, this is building off of that initial hook where it's not over-explaining there's a 4-step process in this framework, and if you do this every day or you do this, you create this planner. It's not telling you that. It's telling you that there's going to be practical strategies to help shift your mindset. You're going to build resilience and really have that feeling of achieving your dream life. So that's touching on more of the emotional benefits versus the practical. And that is what people are going to buy into, is that emotion. They want that feeling of my dreams have come true. Which leads me to my next point, is that the third part of your book description should have a very strong emotional pull. We take action based on emotion more than we do logic. That is a human trait. Call it a flaw, I don't know. But the end of your book blurb is just as important as the beginning, because now you get to wrap up your blurb with a sentence that really sticks them with some of that emotion so that they take action, aka buy your book because they're emotionally invested. So you can do this by asking a question, you can have a bold statement, you can have an emotional state that you're leaving the reader in. So again, that's kind of the underlining goal, regardless of if you do this with a statement or a question, but you want there to be a sense of wonder and a sort of need to know what happens next. So building on our fiction example, the last sentence of the book blurb might be, but the past doesn't stay buried for long, and Lena is about to find out why. Woo! I'm emotionally invested. I want to know who the stranger is. I want to know why she was trying to start a new life, how that secret is involved, how this person knows all of these things, and what she's going to do about it. So now I'm ready to read this book. It's a made-up book that I just made examples for. So if you'd like to take this and write this book, go for it, because I do want to know what happens next. And if we are building off of our nonfiction example, the last sentence might say, if you're ready to finally take control of your life, this book will show you how. So that's a lot more direct. That's that bold statement of if you are ready, this is the toolkit you need to get there. So those are the 3 main components of a book blurb, but I also want to remind you to keep it short and sweet. So remember, this is not a synopsis. This is not a summary. You are not giving it all away. You are just capturing attention and creating an emotional response so that someone takes an action and buys your book. So again, 150 to 250 words is really recommended for the total length of this book blurb. Okay, so here's a couple bonus tips that can also be really helpful. So one of the things I recommend is to avoid cliches like life will never be the same. So while that may be true, that is also true in a gazillion other books and sometimes in real life too, when we go through different transformation and change. So instead, use more like specific and vivid language. So in Lena's case, we didn't just say, life will never be the same. There was a sense of like, she needed to find out why. Like there was a sense of, why does this person know about me? So it's, yes, her life is never going to be the same because obviously she has a secret. She's trying to build her life again. And there's something buried that is going to come to the surface, but it's not like life is never the same again. It's more like her journey of then going to find out why. Another tip that's really helpful when you're writing a book description is to write in third person. Even if your book is in first person, it can be helpful because it gives you a little bit of distance, and it's just kind of a universal way of how we communicate what books are about. And my third bonus tip is to read this out loud and read it to different people. So this is a great opportunity to read it to friends or fellow writers. I often advise not to use our friends and family as guinea pigs for feedback on our writing unless they are diehard readers in our genre. But this can be an opportunity to just test out like, hey, is this hooking them? Do they care? And are they intrigued? Do they lean in and be like, oh, that sounds interesting. I had no idea your book was about that. What is that reaction that you get from someone if they're intrigued or if they're kind of like, whatever? This could be a great opportunity to use our friends and family, but also using fellow writers can also be a great way just to see what people's emotional responses literally are to your book blurb. So I know while writing the book blurb can feel overwhelming and scary, especially as writers, we are very prolific and want to write full-length books. It is a different writing skill, and that's perfectly okay. I invite you to lean in and really focus on what we've talked about here today, with the hook, giving just enough, and really focusing on intriguing people. This is not about giving it all away or creating a full-length summary. So hopefully this has helped demystify some of the structure of the book blurb and will make it less torturous for you when you try to write yours next. And if you need help, I do support authors with this. You can learn more about that service below. But please let me know how this has helped you write your book blurb. Is there anything else that you often use to write yours? Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.